All right, so let's get going. All right, so today we'll look at the future of advertising, question mark, obviously, who knows. We'll go through all of the woo that covers the 21st century. So picking up at the late 90s, right at the turn of the century. So we'll just have a short lecture today, lots of video, lots of commercials, and then we'll have a rather extensive conversation, hopefully, just depends on you guys. So this gives you a good sense of what the future of advertising might be. Could we view something onto the moon? Will we be on the moon? If it's up to Elon Musk, yes. Let's see how it goes. So let's look at some of the great inventions in human history, or the revolutions. So the invention of fire. Why is the invention of fire so important to the evolution of the human species? Go ahead. Yeah, good, good. So anyone else?
There's also a source of light to lead people in the darkness.
Yeah, there's also some scientific studies out that just staring at fire helped humans' brains evolve the synapses, and just staring at fire had the effect of making humans sapiens, thinking beings. All right, so what about the wheel? Good.
Cars, gears, all that.
Yeah, even well before cars, though. Well, so go ahead, Sam.
Because you can move a heavier load with the lighter pulling force.
Yeah, exactly. So the Industrial Revolution, the wheels, Sam, behind me. The Industrial Revolution is obviously fueled by the wheel, particularly railroads. But it also has a very important function in agricultural societies. Once you're able to irrigate, say, the Nile Valley or wherever, you're able to load your crops onto carts, take it to a market or whatever, trade your wares. So really, so the written word. Let me know how it goes. All right, so the written word, why is that so foundational to the evolution of the human species? Good.
Lots of mass communication.
Yeah. Even before, go ahead.
Like a written language that can be passed along.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what separates humans from other, species is we're storytelling animals, right? So it used to be we would pass down our identities from oral translation, but once you're able to write it down, it sort of has a more, effect of, you can write history. Obviously, a nation is bonded by its understanding of what its history is or isn't, I guess. Sam, is that all right?
It's been having problems already. I'll let you know.
So the printing press, why is that so important to human evolution? Right. So you go from the written word where you could write down, say, like a Bible, and there's hundreds of different versions of the Bible that has been written down, to one with the Gutenberg press, one specific Bible that is everyone can sort of like share and understand. So the car, why is that so foundational, especially in American society?
You guys know this, right? Of course. It allowed people to go places and do things on their own.
Yeah, good. So it gives you a sense of freedom. It's also the driving force of the American economy in the post-war period. Detroit in particular is a real economic center for American society. Cars, of course, now are more software than anything else. So the airplane, why is it so important? Good.
It's thanks to the Wright brothers because they were the ones who created it and they thought it would be a perfect way to travel even better without having to worry about boat or a car or like jump.
Right, and it makes the world much smaller, of course. So, it used to be back in the agricultural era, you would really never travel more than 10 or 15 miles unless you were very wealthy, and then you might travel to Europe or somewhere else. Until the invention of the railroad, most people don't travel, outside sort of like a very small circumference of area. the airplane really makes the world smaller, more tightly meshed. All right, so what about the birth control pill? Yeah,
It made it possible for, you know, women not to get pregnant after, you know. And also, it also made it possible to kind of slow down women's menstrual cycles.
go ahead.
It increased life expectancy by a lot because people were able to control the times that they would have children, so there wouldn't be as many children, so they were able to give resources to ones that they did have. It meant that people were better prepared to be parents and therefore could provide for their children in a better way. So it revolutionized what the family looked like.
Yeah, good. And also in terms of labor, it allows a woman to own her labor in a way that she didn't previously. All things being equal, if you had a 20-year-old woman with the same skill set as a 20-year-old man applying for the same job, almost certainly the job would go to the man because the employer would be afraid that like, oh, well, if she gets pregnant, she'll be gone for at least 9 months, and that's bad for the company. I'll have to hire somebody else. I'll have to end up hiring this guy anyway. So in terms of, you know, collective bargaining chips, it sort of allows women to take that excuse off the table for employers. And of course, the internet and information age. Go ahead.
There's a constant stream of information readily available at all times.
Yeah, good.
And it also increases our communication.
Yeah, good. In some good ways and some bad
Yeah.
ways. Go ahead, Sam.
I think this is more of like the dream of the early web than something that was realized, like kind of like the printing press democratization of information and not in like opening up in terms of sources and exchange of information, not just the medium.
Yeah, and it appears that you've read Will, or at least got that information from somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, like at least in the early decades of the internet, it's really driven by counterculturalists, like people who were traveling the Grateful Dead. One of the founders of the Grateful Dead is one of the early pioneers of the internet. And yeah, there's this real notion that it's going to be a democratizing force. You know, there's lots of questions about has that, you know, been the upshot of it. But yeah, also like the airplane, it makes the world much smaller, much more tightly meshed. The airplane really starts this fueling of globalization that happened all through the second half of the 20th century, actually all from the 1900s, gradually gaining momentum through the 20th century. And the internet is just sort of like the coup de grace of making this world we live in today very globalized. All right, so I'll just show you a quick 1-minute video that'll give you a good overview of the history of advertising.
And now, the history of advertising in 60 seconds. Advertising is as old as the human condition, but branded, product-based ads didn't show up until the 18th century when print advertising became the norm. In the 1800s, we got the first billboards and ad agencies began to set up shop. In 1891, companies like Kodak began selling their brand, not just their product. Then, in 1908, new companies like Ford staged flashy publicity events and pioneered the art of looking cool. The soap opera was born when soap companies discovered the popularity of radio dramas among women when they did their housework.
By the makers of Lux toilets.
Colorful watches made the first television commercial. It cost $9. And when psychologists got involved in the 1960s, focus groups transformed the industry into a calculated science. The tactics got a lot less predictable, and the budgets got a lot bigger. Enter the internet. Even though it looked like this and sounded like, advertisers were eager to engage the growing network of more than 5 million users. By the year 2000, ads were appearing alongside search results, driven by consumer interests. Now, advertising is just part of the conversation. For the first time in history, consumers are able to choose the ads they see based on their own taste, and brands are working with publishers to create content. It's a whole new world. Welcome to modern advertising.
All right, so in 1999, this guy, as Sergio Zyman, he has a book published called The End of Marketing as We Know It, and his task is really to sort of look into the future of what, you know, advertising might become. And this is in very early days of the internet, so he doesn't spend a whole lot of time focusing on the internet. This is also the guy who's responsible for New Coke. Anybody know about New Coke? Sam, I see you laughing.
Yeah, they changed the formula in the early 80s, I want to say.
Yeah.
I think as a response to Pepsi, and it was so like just universally hated that they changed back within a year or two.
Yeah, exactly. So So Coke, through most of the 20th century, had really dominated Pepsi, but gradually in the 1950s and 60s, due to Pepsi marketing itself as, you know, the younger, cooler, hipper, whatever soft drink, by the early 1980s, they're about even with Coca-Cola. So Coke really freaks out. It sort of has this planned obsolescence moments where it like tries to make Coke new and improved, and there's a real backlash to it. So I'm not really sure, like, you know, take everything this guy says with a grain of salt since he's the guy responsible for it. But anyway, he has some interesting sort of points that he makes in this book. And one of them is that, you know, the ads are becoming increasingly ubiquitous. So this would be in, say, like a bathroom stall. So this is for like all brand, which of course, like, you know, gives you more regular bowel movements, I suppose, if you're, you know, older or whatever. So it says like, see you same time tomorrow. So sort of this like clever ad where like, you know, it's got a captive audience, so to speak. You're sort of forced to look at it when you're in the bathroom stall. You have increasingly, like the post office, like stamps are becoming more advertisements. This for Disney World, obviously. But also you can have them for, say, you own a company. You could put your company logo on it. If you're mailing something out, you could have your logo or your branding on it. Of course, at the supermarket in the 90s, you start to see these ads showing up on carts, more so in the 21st century. And of course, these things say in like the aisle of the supermarket. So during the 90s, people were just trying to think of, you know, where else can we put ads that we haven't already? And this would use some sort of example of it. There was this whole notion that you could sort of take like a bat symbol type of thing and put it in the night sky to help your branding along. So some of the trends that he spotted at the turn of the 21st century were more immersive experiences were becoming central to ads, more crowdsourced ads via social networking sites, and native advertising, such as ads for Netflix's Orange is the New Black, embedded in the New York Times, in a New York Times article about women in prison, things like that. So there's what he coined as total marketing communications, which he thought would become more prevalent, which I think was spot on. He says companies' attempts to build more intimate and lasting relationships with consumers to build better brand loyalty. Examples of this are the Apple Store, which came into being in the early 21st century. Apple stores, of course, you can interact with other Apple users, machines, take seminars, etc. On Monday, I accidentally dropped one of my AirPods into a New York City drain. So I just spent some time at the Apple Store this week. Really got my week up to a terrible start, but whatever, I've recovered by now, I guess. Of course, Roblox is one of the new technologies. Zyman doesn't point out Roblox, but I think Roblox is a good example. It has user-generated games and experiences. You can buy things with Robux, and you can also buy ad space inside of Robux. So it's like the future of advertising, like an example of advertising being integrated into the metaverse, which we'll see in a bit. So again, the metaverse has a great new horizon for advertisers. You can advertise in a virtual Times Square or a stadium or wherever. So back to the original question, what's the future of advertising? Who really knows? But what's certain is that technology, new technology, like it always has, whether it's the printing press or whatever, will be a driving force in advertising. Go ahead, David.
I was gonna say, Robux currently is actually more valuable than the ruble in Russia.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually worth more money.
That's funny.
Yeah, well, because that's how
oligarchs are buying
badly
up
Russia screwed themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's interesting. All right, so I'll show you a quick ad for the Microsoft Mesh. The sort of like holy grail or like new frontier of advertising is wearables. So like the Apple Watch, Apple glasses. David, did you see Apple's new car coming out?
Yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, again, it just goes to the point that cars are like basically software systems now.
Connection is a spark that gives our lives meaning. It drives us to seek out others who feel the same way.
Okay, why don't you input the data and we'll take a look together. Hey Mari, what you got for me?
To find those who share our views, yet offer different perspectives.
saw this next. Over here.
Challenge us with new ways of seeing. Deepen our understanding. And enrich our lives.
最后一笔的时候，我觉得
Great things happen when we commit to something bigger than ourselves.
Take a closer look at it.
Place this here. Let's see how we go from there, okay?
This sense of collaboration and the feelings of connection it brings excites us.
Hey, just in time. I'm gonna move it slightly, okay?
That's your worst taken.
We have 2 planes right now on the same trajectory.
As we put people first, technology fades into the background and feels like anything but.
Aisha, what do you think?
I think we had 330, maintain 2800. We'll be clear for approach.
This
Excellent.
changes the way we see the world, and in turn, changes the world we see.
These numbers are looking great, actually.
There's promise in the possibilities, and what we see and create next will stretch the imagination.
Good morning, Sarah.
Morning.
Slowly coming towards the phone.
A world without boundaries,
Good job. A lot better than yesterday.
Yeah.
Excellent. Slowly bring
a world where technology enhances, not limits, humanity. With people front, center, and in the spotlight. The future is here, and here can be anywhere. Introducing Microsoft Mesh.
So one of the main goals of advertisers and these tech companies is to remove friction from the, point of sale. So what we mean by friction is that, back in the olden days, you would see a commercial for Pepsi and you would be like, oh, I'm thirsty. I want to go get some Pepsi. So you would actually have to go to the store. Now you can see an ad for Pepsi and say like, hey, Alexa, order Pepsi. And so that's an example of like removing friction from it. So Apple's also got its own glasses. I'll show you their ad and then a day in the life of Apple glasses.
Stylish design, latest augmented reality technology, powerful, and the best wearable smart glasses ever. Introducing Eyeglass, the new reality by Apple. And the first smart glasses will contain lighter scanner, high technology in AR that make them the best smart glasses ever. Eyeglass contain 5G technology to keep you connected to the world. AR technology is used to the maximum, so that you can check the weather just by looking at the sky, and also help you know your destination with the AR maps. Eyeglass is equipped with 2 cameras with high resolution that give you the ability to take high quality pictures, also record videos in 360 degrees, and with high quality. Apple glasses are equipped with Bluetooth and can be connected and controlled with your phone. For the battery, Eyeglass can work more than 24 hours without charging and in any environment. The future is Eyeglass.
So also in the future, say you're out at Times Square, you see an ad for something, like say Pepsi, and you're like, oh, I want to get some Pepsi. You can sort of like click the QR code and it'll, automatically send it to your house or meet you at a destination you're going to. So that's sort of the goal of these commercials, or not commercials, companies. And again, it's all about sort of removing the friction from, getting in your pocket essentially. Here's a day in the life of Apple glasses, so you can see what that's about.
We're both working from home. The high-speed internet is absolutely critical.
Get Fios, the 100% fiber optic network.
Microsoft and Meta are working on is if you say you were, looking at this board here, on one of these posters, there might be a QR code. You can click on the QR code and you can see like the commercial inside of it essentially. So here's Mark Zuckerberg explaining what the metaverse is.
Today, we're going to talk about the metaverse. I want to share what we imagine is possible. The experiences you'll have, the creative economy we'll all build, and the technology that needs to be invented, as well as how we're going to all do this together. The next platform and medium will be even more immersive.
Like a shop.
Some call it skill.
Keep talking.
An embodied internet where you're in the experience, not just looking at it. And we call this the metaverse. The metaverse. Everything we do online today, connecting socially, entertainment, games, work, is going to be more natural and vivid. Whoa, that's a little too realistic. This is more my style. We believe the metaverse will be the successor to the mobile internet. And you're going to be able to do almost anything you can imagine. All right, perfect. Oh, hey, Mark. Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
What's up, Mark?
This place is amazing.
The feeling of presence. This is the defining quality of the metaverse. You're going to really feel like you're there with other people. You'll see their facial expressions, you'll see their body language, maybe figure out if they're actually holding a winning hand. All the subtle ways that we communicate that today's technology can't quite deliver.
I knew you were bluffing.
Avatars will be as common as profile pictures today, but instead of a static image, they're going to be living 3D representations of you. Beyond avatars, there is your home space. Your home is your personal space from which you can teleport to anywhere you want.
Koi fish that fly? That's new.
This is wild.
The metaverse isn't something we're building so much as it's something we're building for.
Across the industry, we need to bring that same imagination and commitment to building for interoperability, openness, safety, and privacy, as we do for all the other product aspects of the metaverse. These have to be fundamental building blocks, just like the other software and experiences that we've been talking about. Our hope, though, is that if we all work at it, then within the next decade, the metaverse will reach 1 billion people, host hundreds of billions of dollars of digital commerce, and support jobs for millions of creators and developers. We are fully committed to this. It is the next chapter of our work, and we believe for the internet overall. Beyond the constraints of screens, beyond the limits of distance and physics, beyond any one problem, and that will be made by all of us. And I'm just incredibly energized to be on this journey with all of you. That was fun.
Good job, Mark.
So is anyone excited about the metaverse?
Seems very dystopian.
Yeah, I mean, like how so?
Well, I mean, one thing that I noticed is it's very actively removing us from the physical and material world.
Yeah, the organic world.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know. I don't see it as a very positive thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I would also say it's very dystopian. And just a kind of a question to you. I don't know if you've seen this particular ad. There's a new army ad out that's basically like a response to this. And it's like connected, but like not present or something. And it's like basically join the army because like you're in this world where you don't feel, that's the word, like fully satisfied.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's already backlash to things like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, like DARPA is obviously at the forefront of this, buys up, the military contractors tend to buy things from DARPA. But there's, the whole movement of drones, like people basically being in like a basement in Utah and flying drones and like doing kill strikes in Afghanistan and things like that. Like it's had real bad psychological impacts for the people flying those drones. Like this one guy just read an article in the New York Times this week about like he just disappeared into the California woods like a year ago, and nobody's seen him since. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it reminds me of the warning from both the book and movie Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Because they're living in this really, really crappy world, and the only way that they can really have any fun is to, go online.
Yeah.
So
I mean-
also, there was also a book titled The Store, which was an allegory for Amazon taking over the world. And this isn't exactly that, but it's pretty similar.
Yeah, yeah, and there's this whole notion that like did you see how they were depicted, how Mark Zuckerberg was depicted as like not actually Mark Zuckerberg, but was like this cartoonish figure. In reality, like 10 years from now, it'll be able to look exactly like you. Your avatar will essentially look just like you, but there'll also inevitably be these sort of like enhancements to your appearance that you already see in like social networking now, where like people make their nose smaller or whatever the case may be. Sam, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's weird that so many of us can immediately identify this as dystopian, and it's still like considered to be like all tech companies are sort of pushing for this integration. And I think it's strange that like all this stuff is so clearly cyberpunk. Like we have a whole genre of fiction informing us how this is bad,
Yeah,
this is terrible, this is
like a great
cautionary tale type stuff.
Yeah,
But everyone is just like, all right, we're going ahead with the metaverse, everybody.
yeah, it's like William Gibson has tried to warn us so many times, hasn't he? Gio, did you want to add something?
I was just pretty much gonna say, it's scary, but I also think that, I'm sorry for my voice.
Yeah, no, it's,
I feel like children are more at risk to be harmed by this because it's probably gonna be more popular in the coming years. And they're probably not gonna get the same type of, I guess, the teenage experience that most.
yeah, just like the internet that I grew up with is way different than the internet you guys grew up with. And yeah, obviously the metaverse is going to be, this is like a prototype of it essentially. Let me, I'll come back to you.
I think it's something that's interesting to think about is how Facebook has already struggled with like censoring people and like rules on their platform.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that would transfer to the metaverse where people are, you can't like censor words or specific things like that. So how will that be controlled?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's interesting. Will ISIS be beheading people in the metaverse? Like, we'll see. Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed he said that his metaverse will house 1 billion people at some point.
Yeah.
There's still very large populations that are greater than just 1 billion.
Yeah, it's like almost 8 billion now. I don't. Yeah, so at some point they'll probably get everyone in there. Kira, did you want to?
I just think it's so weird. Like, it's not actually, you aren't, you're still in your house. Like, I don't know, it just feels like very.
The thing is, you could be in like a studio apartment, but it's actually like a mansion, right? And like you're getting up,
Yeah,
and, like
but like
walking
it's
to the
not.
kitchen, bumping
Yeah,
into the wall.
exactly. I saw this article, and I think it was from CNN. I didn't read the whole thing, but it was Zaha Hadid architecture firm is like building an entire city in the metaverse, and you're talking about like how expensive it can be. I'm like, how is it going to be that expensive? You weren't building with anything. It's all like programming. Like,
Yeah.
I don't get it like at all.
Yeah, that's what's costing so much money. Is we have to hire the software engineers. Kyle, like, does this strike you as the same? You're doing a paper about the space age. Do you see any parallels between this and sort of advertising the space age?
I wanted, my gut reaction is to say actually no, simply because of the space age, the emphasis was on sort of expanding your mind and like, hey, there's this little bit of uranium inside this capsule, and here's a little set that lets you mess around with it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like maybe you want to be a nuclear scientist teacher. This is taking away the expand. Like I know they're trying to push it as like we can build cities and stuff in the metaverse. People are gonna go in there and they're gonna just sit down on their couch and like not move around. Like I remember when Wii was a new thing and everyone's like, yeah, people are gonna stand up and people play bowling on the couch. I feel like I know how humans are gonna respond to this, and it's not gonna be what they're sort of portraying.
Yeah. I mean, I do see a parallel between the space age though, because a lot of it's rooted in like the dystopianism of like fear of nuclear holocaust. And part of the urge for like getting off this planet is being driven by the belief that the Russians and Americans will end up destroying the world at some point. And I think this might be sort of tied into the fears associated, like the underlying anxieties associated with, what's going to happen to the planet as a result of climate change, this like new apocalypse. It's sort of like a, what do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think thank you for making that point about the space age, because I was thinking about that a little bit. Like, the space age of the 20th century was about opportunity expanding, and you're like, oh, you can be a space ranger, you can go to Mars, you can do like all this stuff. And I think our imagination outran our capabilities in that case. But here, our capabilities have caught up, but the messaging is so different. It's like you'll have access to all this amazing technology. You can talk to anyone from around the world, but you'll stay in your apartment and you'll stay small and you'll keep buying shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's going to be inorganic in some way. I'm not sure that that's such a great thing, but I think that part of that, like this allure of inorganic, is like a sort of subconscious realization that like the organic world is changing rapidly. So anyone else have anything to add? Yeah.
No, I was gonna say like it's kind of a scary thing to do because I play a lot of like science fiction games, and most of them, in particular, talks about like how really scary just into like individual.
Yeah.
So like I think like this is like kind of getting to that point because it's like, oh, you're gonna be like you're gonna be in some digital world. Like, that's kind of yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's just like it's weird because like I'm already skeptical about that whole brain shit thing that Elon Musk is trying to do.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
still skeptical about that.
But this even ties back to like the World War II, where you have people like, Ted Williams, like in like Walt Disney, wanting to freeze themselves because they think they can be reanimated later on as well. So it's like these things just sort of like refresh themselves over time. All right, so let's look at a Meta Super Bowl ad, which again, this is like, as everyone sort of pointed out, this is this sort of dystopian thing. You can see the opposite of that portrayed in this ad.
Closing time. Get out, please. Stop playing, please. Let's go, folks. Come on. Keep it over there. Come on, let's go.
Has anyone tried that request? Or whatever their eyewear was called before? How do you like it?
I actually think it's really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, you kind of do need a lot of space to use it.
Yeah.
I think I had the Quest 2, which is like the third mobile one. I would love to get like the Steam Deck or like the Steam one that plugs into a computer and you get more video games, more realistic. Because I think it's the future of video games.
Yeah.
Period.
What do you mean by that?
I just think being able to immerse yourself into that space, and no matter where you look, you're always going to be in there, is the future of video games. Like,
Like totally immersive experience.
Yeah, sitting at a desk and with only having a monitor in front of you, doesn't really hit the same as being in the game.
I think they'll ever be able to like pump scents and things like that, like smells.
I know that there's companies that are already working on like these air bars where you like they have these different scents that like come and you can smell them. I've seen it somewhere on the internet. It's really weird, but I feel like that will be worked into.
So like boxing games will really be able to get your.
Actually, funny enough you said that. I remember seeing an ad somewhere that I think China has created this TV that you can smell.
Oh, really?
Like if you get really close to it,
Scratch
you
and
can
sniff
smell.
TV.
Yeah, I know.
Interesting. Gio, did you want to add something?
Yeah, can you just define dystopian again? 'Cause I-
Dystopian, like, well, you know what utopian is, right? Like the notion that like everything will, there'll be like equality, no suffering, no hunger. So dystopian is like the antithesis of utopian. It's like where everything's like an hellscape essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, the Chinese TV thing, you buy these like, it like comes with them, but like then you have to buy them when they run out, but it comes with like these little like test tubes or capsules or something that you essentially load in. But like it's like really primitive. It's like it only gives you like I think like 4 different smells or something like that, but it is real. It does exist.
Interesting.
It's really strange. And I think like these like video game, metaverse and things like that. I think that's what it's really going to be catering towards is more, it's just a big video game
Yeah.
that we're all in rather, like in Ready Player One.
Right.
Except the problem is there's going to be people that aren't going to start treating it as a video game. They're going to start treating it like their real life.
Yeah.
Rather than us being here, this is going to be their fake life. And then, on the computer is going to be their actual real life that they actually want to be in.
Right. So, but the underlying theme is that it's just like a more and more sophisticated and nuanced escape from reality, right? Just like, why not just commit suicide if that's your end goal now? Kyle, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about the question because I don't have one of my cousins does. It's one of those things where I can see it as being less dystopian than the metaverse.
Yeah.
But I just had this interesting moment where they brought it like to my birthday or whatever. And a lot of us younger kids who grew up with the games and the sort of pop culture stuff. We're like, I'll put it on and go. But we just like put it on our grandparents or parents. And all they could do was like sit down in like the main area and look around and be like, oh, there's a tree. Like they just didn't understand how to move in the 3D space. And I feel like it's going to be the next sort of like just internet, right? There are going to be so many people that either don't know how to use it or refuse how to use it. Like it's going to be this thing where it's like, oh, if you don't, you're like obsolete. I feel like it's going to be a
Well, there's a place in Midtown where they have like a whole bunch of different like experiences set up, all of the headwear, and there's one of them that's like a high wire act. And like you can see like younger kids just jump on there and they're like just slip across it, but old people like aged people, I guess I should say, like they really are sort of like whoa, like I would really seem to be like afraid of falling, which I thought was like really interesting from a sociological.
And also to think of it from like sort of a more like just in your own mind, like imagine being an older person and thinking like I'll never get this before like I expire. Like, that's not really healthy.
Well, maybe if they could be in a vegetative state for the rest of eternity in some sort of beautiful, utopia. We'll see how it goes. That's what Walt Disney was hoping for. All right, so anyone else have anything to add? All right, so here's a good example. This ties into what Kira was saying about sort of like real estate, the effect that real estate adds to the metaverse, where whole cities will be built.
Grammarly does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find the real estate industry will be disrupted by the metaverse and NFTs in a significant way this year. Property owners who are prepared will enjoy entirely new revenue streams, while those who ignore the signs may see their assets depreciate in value. Let's review some important facts about real estate and advertising. There are currently 130 million buildings in the United States and 4.4 billion buildings in the world. The current global billboard advertising business is valued at $66 billion. While the global internet advertising business tops out at $374 billion. Why is there such a difference? Billions of people are targeted by advertisers on their mobile devices and computers, while only a limited number of properties in the real world are able to obtain a permit to display a single billboard on their property. When a person engages with online advertising, they can click, make a purchase, and exchange data. Internet advertising is far more valuable as no static real-world building has this capability. Everything we know about advertising is about to change. Consumer augmented reality eyewear are starting to be released to the market from a number of companies.
and it is predicted that Apple will enter the space with their AR glasses as soon as Q3 of this year. When this happens, any building in the world can become a canvas for media and most logically host an outdoor advertisement without being subject to permitting restrictions. As the three-dimensional internet, also known as the metaverse, merges with the real world, the out-of-home ad industry and the internet advertising business will blend together to create an entirely new category of revenue for property owners. The explosion of this real-world display inventory will birth a new trillion-dollar industry overnight. Investors are ready to pay to participate.
Yeah, so this is catering specifically to people that say that Apple glasses, you'll say, like, look at the Empire State Building, you'll see like ads projected onto it. But I'm guessing that that technology will also be integrated into the virtual cities that Kara talked about. So it'll be like, you know how on the Land O'Lakes box, the Land O'Lakes girl is like holding the Land O'Lakes box, holding the Land O'Lakes box, and holding the Land O'Lakes box. It'll probably be something similar to that, but augmented or real reality. And of course, just like Sam pointed out, how in the early internet, it was thought to be this sort of very democratic thing, but over time, corporations have really bought up the space, especially like search. Large companies really dictate the order of things that you find when you search for something on, say, Google or whatever. Wendy's, of course, is buying up space in the metaverse, in Miller Lite. So I'll show you the Wendy's.
Friends would walk up to me and be like, "What the f is in your mug?" And I would just tell them.
The metaverse is all the rage right now. And today we're going to be looking at one brand who has gotten involved in the metaverse and is doing some great metaverse marketing. This can be a template that you can use for your own business, or at least something to consider. Let's go ahead and dive into this one. Before you get started, make sure to click the notification bell and make sure to subscribe so that you get more videos like this in the future. So even Meta, Facebook or Meta, whatever, they say the metaverse is still about 5 to 10 years away. They recognize it's not here now. But on the other end, they are seeing some businesses come in and do metaverse marketing, do different types of experiences in the metaverse. Let's take a look at one. Specifically in this video, we're going to look at Wendy's experience in Horizon Worlds. So on Saturday, April 2nd, Wendy's launched its first virtual space in Horizon Worlds in collaboration with Horizon Worlds creators. So people with a Meta Quest 2 device are able to access and experience the first virtual Wendy's restaurant and venture into a new world that's designed exclusively for them. These visitors are able to walk behind the counter, interact with friends, embark on mouth-watering adventures, and here's what they have to say about it. This is from Carl Laredo, Chief Marketing Officer at the Wendy's Company. Here's what he says. For years, we've been meeting our fans in unexpected ways and places with our unique approach to social media, gaming, and engagement. We're excited to take this to the next level by launching the Wendyverse in Meta Horizons world and bring a totally new dimension of access to our fans. Truly a first of its kind, the Wendyverse bridges the best of today with tomorrow to show up for our fans across the world with a Frosty and a fries in hand. In this new experience, Wendy's is creating new ways to interact with their company. Let's take a look at it. So they came out with the Buck Biscuit Dome, where fans will be able to shoot hoops with a virtual Baconator, get on the court and cut off the net after hitting a winning shot, and do more. Visitors will also find hidden Easter eggs, including free food, only available in Horizon Worlds. Keep in mind, this experience launched in early April, so there's a little bit of date information involved here. Over the next decade, we plan to see a lot more experiences like this from major brands in the metaverse, where people and customers are coming in, interacting with these businesses in different fun ways, many of which include gaming or just some type of interactive nature. You can win a prize.
Yeah, so Miller Lite also set up a virtual bar that you can go to. But Iceland has a funny sort of reaction to all of this, like hullabaloo about the metaverse. I'll show it to you.
Hi, and welcome to this very natural setting. Today, I want to talk about a revolutionary approach on how to connect our world without being super weird. Some said it's not possible. Some said it's out of reach. To them, we say it's already here. Seriously, look, it's right here. And what do we call this not so new chapter in human connectivity? The Iceland version. Enhanced actual reality without silly looking headsets. In our open world experience, everything is real. And has been for millions of years. It's completely immersive, with water that's wet. With humans to connect with. You're human, right? Isn't she funny? In the Iceland verse, there's real moss you can look at, but please don't touch. It's very delicate. Skies you can see with your eyeballs. Volcanic rocks you can caress. Really big geysers you can observe from a safe distance. Birds you can watch. They're really cute, but a bit stupid. Waterfalls you can stand near, like this one, that one, this one, that one, and even this one. Horses you can ride, with hair you can touch. The Iceland verse is a world with possibilities so endless, they'll be here forever. So join us today, or tomorrow, or whenever. We are really easygoing. Now, please enjoy our logo.
So you can see how they're sort of like spoofing the Mark Zuckerberg explication of what the metaverse was. So I think his like face, like the thing that he was wearing in his face, is sort of like spoofing this picture of Zuckerberg as well with all the suntan lotion on. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like it reminds me of Volkswagen's ads, this planned obsolescence ad where, you know, metaverse, the meta, you know, universe, whatever is trying, it's basically like planned obsolescence for reality. It's like a new and improved reality. And I think that commercial for Iceland does a good job of capturing that sort of like vibe that Volkswagen had in the 50s and 60s to, you know, criticize American cars, planned obsolescence in the car company. And I think that Iceland does a good job of that same thing.
Yeah, I just happened to side when that person who was quoted in the Wendy's ad said that they have a unique approach to like gaming and engagement and marketing. That's actually true, because 3 years ago, they released basically their own version of Dungeons and Dragons called Wendy's Feasts of Legends. And all the character classes were like different menu items. And so if you were like, you had a person who was playing like a Fry Warrior and a Frosty Wizard, you could combo and did Fry Frosty combo. I still have it somewhere, but it was definitely not something any other.
It's interesting you said that, because I thought of like an interesting idea for a chessboard this week, where you have like, you know, Karl Marx and like a whole bunch of like leftists on one side of the board and like Rockefeller and like Carnegie on the other side of the board, and like against each other. Don't anyone steal that. I got dibs on that. Unless it already exists, it might very well. A lot of times I'll think of a great idea for an app and then I'll check to see that it already exists. So, all right, last video of the semester, Russia, Facebook, and the culture war.
Why people are choosing this $99 drone over established drone brands. There's a tiny US drone.
Facebook tells us that a Russian group spent $100,000 on ads to influence the 2016 presidential election. How do they do it? It's actually very simple. There are only 3 things you need to run a very sophisticated advertising campaign: a Facebook account, the ad itself, and a credit card. Facebook's website holds your hand through the rest through its self-service advertising system. Let's say you have an ad that you want to show to gun owners in Pennsylvania. Simple. Facebook can route your ad to everyone who lists their home state in Pennsylvania and has purchased a gun or read posts and pages about gun ownership. You can target ads based on race, political affiliation, education level, pretty much anything. Facebook can target specific demographic groups because it has so much information on its users. The articles they click on, the pages they follow, the things they like, all of it is reported for later targeting by advertisers. There's also the information the users provide themselves, like what town they're from and what school they went to. This self-service ad purchasing tool is how the Russian group called the Internet Research Agency ran its campaigns. The ads are meant to stir up controversy over immigration, race relations, gun rights, and more. Facebook says that before ads are distributed, they're sent for review, but it's a mostly automatic process that doesn't really block controversial ads based on the content of the ad, which means the Russians were able to run thousands of ads with factually incorrect information and inflammatory political speech, which Facebook users couldn't tell came from Russia. And the Russian group created fake accounts and pages to run the ads, which looked like they were just coming from concerned US citizens. Just a little bit of money goes a long way. With $100,000, the Russia group was able to reach 10 million people. Remember that swing states in the election were won by mere thousands of votes.
I don't want anyone to use our tools to undermine democracy.
Facebook recently said that to prevent election manipulation in the future, it plans to hire 1,000 humans to help review ads that are politically or racially targeted. But they still haven't said exactly what the review parameters will be. We'll hear more about their efforts when Facebook, Google, and Twitter testify in front of both the House and Senate.
So again, you get a sense of just how pernicious advertising can be in a political context. It's good to see these types of videos just to remind yourself that you're being manipulated at all times. It's like the KGB and the CIA used to spend like millions, if not billions of dollars collecting data on people, and now people just like collect the data on themselves and like hand it over for good or ill. All right, so let's discuss the attention merchants, starting with chapters 20 through 22. Next, so first question. Google argues that Google proved to be a better attention merchant than Microsoft. What does Google mean by this? Let's start with what does he mean by attention merchant?
He wants to expand his idea of advertising, like by attention, like he wants like get a bigger crowd by showing the new ideas Google is going to prepare for the world.
Yeah, so in earlier chapters, he talked about how, commercials were the attention merchants and how Zenith created the remote control to try to sort of like, protect you from the harvesting of your attention. Tim, did you want to add something?
No.
Okay. All right, so how was Google a better attention merchant than Microsoft?
Because Google makes more money than Microsoft does.
That's part of it, but how?
Like, I guess because of their ways of advertising is much more unique than Microsoft does. Like Google has like actual has actual ads to express their new devices through like either computers or through screens. And not only that, they also have they must have lasted longer than Microsoft ever did, and they now have the money to have the power to create any advertising they want because it's legal.
Okay, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, that like by the point that Google was starting to launch, Microsoft essentially was a monopoly in the personal computer market, but they were mostly focused on selling hardware and maintaining their market hold. And Google, because of the way of the service it provided and the way it provided it, was able to just generate more engagement in general and to leverage and move that engagement around to better effect.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it. Like Wu talks about how Microsoft got into the internet too early before like people really understood what it was. And Microsoft essentially tried to turn the internet into another television station, right? Which ultimately ends up being MSNBC, which is of course the sort of antidote to Fox News in many people's minds. In Google, one of their inventions was AdWords, where it's just sort of like this very stealth advertising off to the side of the search. Google became the most profitable attention merchant in human history. Ironically, it was Google's contempt for ads that made it such a successful advertiser. Google became ubiquitous. Its ads in exchange for free search was a compromise most were glad to make. Even if AdWords was a paradigm shift, it was still advertising, and Google, however ingenious, was still an attention merchant. All right, so next question. Who writes up the idea of advertising that the idea that of advertising that adds value to something was something of a holy grail to both the tech industry and ad industry. What does Wu mean by this?
That content and advertising are usually just like taken for granted that they're at odds, that user experience is only diminished by the addition of advertising, that it gets like in the way of what you actually want, quote unquote. And so Wu was saying like the idea of an ad that brings you closer to what you wanted in the first place is like would be a godsend to both tech and the tech and ad industries, because it would reconcile those two.
Yeah, exactly. It removes the friction, right? Which is the whole sort of idea behind all of this, including the metaverse. All right, so next question. The proliferation of blogs in the early 2000s seemed, Wu argues, to be what Marcuse wanted in terms of Eden. What does Wu mean by this? What did Marcuse mean by Eden? Let's start with that. We discussed that a couple weeks ago. Does anyone read the Bible? Go ahead.
Well, to start it off, I just remember basically the start of blogs was more of a way for, like, I guess it sort of talked about how people who didn't normally like put themselves out there that much started to take advantage of this whole new era and new space, and kind of started this whole movement for people to feel like they had a place to talk about their lives and start that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a big part of it. I mean, this whole notion that you used to have these traditional gatekeepers, which was like corporations like NBC, CBS, whatever, who are, you know, very integrated into other, you know, conglomerates, like, you know, companies they're conglomerated with. But blogs sort of like blew out that paradigm, and it created a space for anyone to sort of like express their own voice, their own interests, and you could almost certainly find an audience on the World Wide Web for like-minded people. That was like that gets back to Sam, what he was saying about this whole like belief that the web was going to be this real democratizing force, this real utopian force in civilization. All right, so how, according to Wu, did the Huffington Post change the rules of the game in terms of how journalism worked or didn't really work? Go ahead.
It was all online, funded mostly just by Ariana Huffington, I think, and mostly did celebrity op-eds and other features of a sort of left liberal bent.
Yeah, yeah, but does Wu see this like the popularization of things like BuzzFeed, TMZ?
Yeah, I think he segues right into BuzzFeed right after that, where like people are no longer need to be either a journalist or an authority figure in order to command your attention and to command your authority.
Yeah, does he see this as like a good thing or a bad thing? In terms of like the progress of human civilization, democracy, and things like that. Sees it as a bad thing. Sees this as like clickbait, right? Like, says success at harvesting attention and sensationalist headlines and stories, i.e. turning news into clickbait. And the goal of the new news outlets such as HuffPost, BuzzFeed, TMZ, etc., was to get clicks as opposed to being a custodian of the public trust, like the New York Times or Washington Post supposedly aims to be. All right, so let's jump ahead to Wu's chapter 23 through 25. And so what two companies have harvested more attention from internet users than any others? Go ahead.
Facebook and Google.
Yep, exactly. Well done. All right, so next one. Wu argues that Facebook had a peculiar magic. What, according to Wu, was this magic? Go ahead.
At the time, like originally when it started, there were very few companies that allowed people to interact the way that they could on Facebook. Like there was really only ways to, I think they said that Facebook offered a way to like really express yourself on the internet for the first time. And instead of just like having your name out there, it's a whole description of yourself and being able to connect with, I believe it started out with people on Harvard's campus, because that's how it started, and then it grew out into, you could connect to people all over the world.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
It was also, like, it says that it wasn't providing something new, but an enhanced representation of an existing social reality. So it was like, oh, yeah, it was for the first time you were able to see something on the internet that was a reflection of real life.
Yeah.
But in a, like, it was the most, I guess, refined at the time. It was the most refined platform at the time.
Let's put an asterisk next to that. We'll get back to that. Go ahead.
Just kind of working off that, I was going to say, it actually says it right here, but that through Facebook, you could create an augmented representation of yourself.
Yeah.
So you could order that in the reality of seeing something that's more genuine or true to how you view yourself online.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it also says on like page 301, it like replaced cyberspace with something real, but then it also created like another form of like unreality because like people can like put themselves on an account and it can be fake and it's just all, it's more misleading.
Yeah, exactly. So that connects to what I was saying. Like it's actually like presenting just a very narrow slice of like a human experience, and everyone is depicting themselves to be like, in a utopian sense, like everyone's sort of like partying or at weddings or whatever. Kyle, what do you want to say?
Yeah, sort of going off of that, it's the sort of idea, and this is very early Facebook, of the sort of expansion of your social realm, because you're able to talk to people who maybe you haven't spoken to in like however long, right? You don't have to go out and find them because they're right there in front of you. So to you, it's like, oh, I'm being more social, I'm knowing more people. You're knowing these people on a very base level.
Yeah, but would Wu agree that it's actually making you more social?
It's not.
Like if you guys can command F the word magic, see where that takes you. If you command F this article, okay. Okay, that explains. Yeah, so he says the peculiar kind of magic is that like you can keep up with your family without actually having to keep up with that. And he sees this as sort of like, a regression in actual human communication, human relations, where I'll read to you what he says. He says, keeping up with friends and family without actually having to keep up with them. This digital version of human interaction began to be the norm, and the social bonds that connected humans for millennia began to fray as a result. And I think that is the next step in that process. All right. So Wu points out that Facebook seemed to be free to use, but in truth, users traded friends for what? Go ahead.
I think that would be user data, right?
Exactly, yeah. So massive amounts of user data. All right, so Wu points out that Facebook created a realm of unreality, which I think you were getting to in the back. What does Wu mean by this? Go ahead.
I think he points out that when you build your circle of friends on Facebook, you're not representing your existing social circle, you are recreating your existing social circle in this imaginary space.
Yeah.
And so that like this, even though your Facebook self is nominally has the same name and faces you, it's another version of you that is the best version of you.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like it's only posting the highlights of your life, like birthdays and the nice places you've gone to. So it's just like
Exactly. You're like creating yourself as like a lifestyle brand essentially, rather than like a whole variegated human being, the whole spectrum of like human anxieties, emotions, etc. Go ahead.
And it says on Facebook, all happy friends are like
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So this is like the stage where people start to create these like utopian lifestyle brands. Like part of the blowback for Kim Kardashian like a month ago or whatever, saying like, you need to get off your ass and get away. It's like her whole brand is like making it seem like she doesn't have to do any work. That's like part of the reason it was like such a farce, All right, so Facebook made society seem like one big utopian celebration. Yeah. All right, so next question. Wu argues that just as American democracy had in previous decades promised that any child could grow up and be president, and just as capitalism promised that any child could work hard and get rich, the attention economy, Wu asserts, threw up its own image for the disoriented or discontented masses. What was this mirage? Go ahead.
that like anybody could gain like fame or like respect or followers from the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. Microfame is the key term too. So he says, yeah, fame for everyone, even those with no seeming reason to be famous. And he connects this to the onset of reality television at the time too, like sees the two as very much connected. All right, so what was, according to Wu, this hunger for fame, what was it really? There's like a very specific word that should really resonate with people living in times of it. Go ahead. Yeah, exactly. So what did he mean by that? All right, so yeah, he says it's a pandemic swallowing up more and more people and leaving them with scars of chronic attention boredom. Few of the traditional rewards of fame came, but more of the cost came. All right, so let's look at 26 through 28, and then we'll look forward to next week and the week after. All right, so Wu argues that the new ad technology of the 21st century was bad for consumers. How, according to Wu, was it bad?
It can be a huge invasion of privacy. Like it can, like technology now evolves so much, it's invading our privacy. It's also a human need we need to help us grow. With technology doing that, we won't have a chance to.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to add to that? Just think about it in terms of like the nuts and bolts of your experience online. So here's what Wu says. This is the new ad technology made the sites they wanted to visit slower, and trying to exit out of them, out of an ad often took the user to another series of ads. Ads often also tried to exploit a user's insecurities, such as weight loss, plan, etc. The ads were also not very lucrative for advertisers. The best minds of a generation were also trying to get people to click ads, which seemed a microcosm of how society was crumbling. So rather than the best minds of the generation trying to create, cures for cancer or whatever, they're sort of being sucked into the tech industry to try to get into your pocket, essentially. All right, so next question. Wu points out that Apple dropped an atomic bomb on Google and Facebook. What was this atomic bomb? And was this bomb a sign of societal progress? How was your day? Good. You guys were?
Yeah.
The answer is Apple's Tim Cook opposed the data harvesting of Google and Facebook, and he lamented that free services had turned users into the product. This critique was not just aimed at Google and Facebook, but at what the entire web had become. None of it enhanced the use of Apple's devices, and Apple thus released an ad blocking in iOS 9. So this atomic bomb was ad blocking in the form of iOS 9's ad blocking. But Ad Age laments this. They say they opine that ad blocking was theft. The Newspaper Association of America claimed that ad blocking threatened democracy. Another opined that ad blocking blocked food from entering children's mouths. And those who advocated ad blockers said it was one of the few tools available to combat the cannibalization of the web. So is the user being the product? And you need not have read these articles to interject in this. Is the user being the product a bad thing, considering so many people think of themselves as brands?
Yeah, not exactly, because like it's not really the user who's being bad, it's usually the advertising itself that is. Like the user just viewing it. The advertising, they're trying to expand and trying to rip people off just so they can make money, and I believe that's wrong. But the government looking through us right now through our computers.
Yeah. Yeah. Not just the government.
Yeah, anyone.
But what's the difference between the two at this stage? Go ahead.
I think it's like, I guess you could say it is a bad thing, because like it's kind of like selling yourself off to people. Because when I think of product, like you're selling it, so like I think of myself as a product, like sell myself off, so it's who I am. Oh yeah, there's personalities for sale, like this is much more because you need to. Like, some brands, Sephora or something like that, there's names are very unique to them. So either while being a brand is a bad thing, because some brands are so much so product is like bad thing.
Okay. So it has like a negative spiritual connotation if you name yourself as a brand. Okay. Anyone else want to complete that?
I think it's different for everyone. I think it's how people prioritize their attention and their time. I think if they really see themselves as the product, maybe it comes to a point of like respect for themselves that they have, like spending so much time. If they really view themselves as brands, like how much time they're really putting into it, how much of their attention they're giving up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it in terms of like, influencers and things like that. Who, like, can you really be like fully absorbed in like the joy of a moment if they're like abstracting or like, how am I looking as I'm enjoying this? You know, it's like, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I feel like the people are more or less like kind of a prophet for the hierarchy. It's kind of selling that brand. It's kind of like in that movie with Charlie Chaplin, Modern Times,
Yeah.
where he's working for this big company as a whole, and like I don't know, he kind of has to live up to that hierarchy.
Yeah, he's become like a cog in a machine of sorts. That's a really interesting connection. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, Sam, you should say something.
Yeah, like I think the idea of like there's you and then there's the parallel identities that you construct for social media, and then there's the parallel identity constructed for you by advertisers is I forgot what I was going with this.
Yeah, it's like the subject becomes the object and the object becomes the subject.
Yes. I really had something to add to say about this.
No worries. Let's come back to it if you think of it. All right. So final question. Like I think the answer is like, to be determined. These are like foundational questions that historians will answer in the future at some point. All right. So last question. Some, Wu points out, argued that the web had made humans stupider and resulted in the suppression of ingenuity and creativity. The web, some asserted, seemed to be bobbing in the currents of aggressive egotism and neurasthenic passivity. Has the net made the human species stupider and more passive and egotistic? Because we don't have too much time to spend on this, so go ahead.
Yeah, just going off on a whim here. I definitely think it's made us more passive and less of a species of critical thinkers, because we're constantly being inundated with so much information that one would just take too much time to parse everything out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's like drinking from a fire hose.
yeah, it just takes too much time to figure out the truth from the fiction. And I think it has kind of led us into sort of laziness, because what's the point? There's so much information.
And the notion that like we're living in echo chambers now too, where like conservatives live in one echo chamber, liberals will live in another echo chamber, and you don't actually get any sort of like negative feedback from like the other side. Yeah.
I also agree, like in a lot of ways, yes, but and especially with social media being around right now, I feel like it really has also divided the community, because everything now kind of in a way revolves back to social media. It all comes back to it.
I mean, I think Twitter's a good example of that, where like, it's all about like dunking on people now. All right, so before you leave, let's just look ahead for the next 2 weeks. So some major questions that you need to take away as you leave the class are: what are ads and where do they come from? Are we being manipulated? What's an ad beyond what meets the eye? How do ads get made? What do ads teach us about race, class, gender, nationalism, etc.? Does sex sell? What's the future of advertising? So as you go forward in the rest of your life, keep these questions in mind as you're being advertised to. All right, so for next week, no class Tuesday or Thursday. Just research, revise, work on your paper. 90% of writing is rewriting, so make sure that you're really revising. You're basically connecting the dots in a way that you hadn't before revising. Review, the readings or do the readings for the first time might be a better way of saying it. In preparation for the exam. The paper is due on Thursday. Again, no class. Just continue to revise. The final will be available by 4 p.m. At the latest, you'll have a week to do it. For Tuesday, week 16, revise your exam. Again, it's all about sort of like connecting the dots. It's better to be, over thorough than not thorough enough. Thursday, revise again, and it'll be due by midnight. So enjoyed having you guys as a class. I'll see you on the flip side, I guess. Good luck with everything going forward. Have a good summer. Stay safe, healthy, all that.
Wow, that's our last class. I thought we were just-
I saw that on the movie too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because you have so much like research and writing that needs to happen before the exam, especially since it's very inherent that a lot of you have to go to the readings. You'll definitely sort of need to do a lot of heavy lifting in the next 2 weeks. So you'll think that like, oh, I don't have to do anything because I don't have class. Actually, you need to get some work done. So I'll see you guys next semester, some other time in the future. Good luck with everything. Take care. Thank you. See you guys. Thank you. Bye, guys. Take care. See you, man. Good luck with everything. See you. Bye, Professor.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you for everything. Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.